You didn't press play by accident. Your vibrational field attracted this exact moment because there is a simple practice hidden beneath centuries of noise that begins to reorganize everything now. Maybe you can't explain it, but you feel it. You feel like something is out of place, like there's a tiredness that doesn't come from the body, a longing for something you've never lived, but your soul seems to remember, a restlessness that isn't physical or logical, it's vibrational. And when that restlessness appears, it's not there to punish you, it's there to push you back inward. In this audiobook, you won't find common advice. What you'll experience here is a realignment, words chosen as frequency, silence used as a tool, presence treated as power, and it all starts with a single inner movement. Stop chasing and start listening to what's already vibrating inside you. This practice you're about to discover was used in ancient temples. It's recorded in gestures that survive time, in texts that only reveal their true meaning when the being is ready. It's not theoretical, it's transformational, and you only got here because you've already started moving inward, even if you haven't realized it yet. Nothing will be pushed onto you, but everything can be awakened, and the memory of who you are has already begun. Because the mirror doesn't lie, but it only reveals when the gaze is clean. And now, it's about to show you something you didn't expect. Introduction. You didn't find this audiobook by chance. It was the invisible field of your consciousness that brought you here. It doesn't matter if you were just scrolling, distracted, or actively seeking answers. If this narration reached you, it's because your soul was already calling, and you answered. Maybe unknowingly, maybe without understanding why, but you answered. And that already changes everything. There's a discomfort no one sees, a kind of silent unease that slowly grows, like an echo deep in your chest. At first, it just feels like fatigue. Then it becomes a knot, a sense of being out of place. You try to fill that emptiness with anything: work, distraction, food, social media, relationships, but nothing lasts. Because what's missing isn't outside. What's missing is you with yourself. This audiobook is not an explanation. It's an encounter, and it starts at the exact point where you stop pretending, where the pain became instructive instead of tolerable, where silence became a scream instead of an absence. This is where the calling begins to echo louder. And it's not a calling full of promises, miracles, or magical formulas. It's a calling that puts you face to face with something you've been avoiding for a long time: your truth. You may have ignored this calling for years. You may have worn headphones to avoid hearing it, lived in noise, ran from it, but it doesn't go away. It just transforms into anxiety, into insomnia, into existential emptiness, into crying that comes out of nowhere, into a strange feeling that you're not living, just existing. And that's the breaking point. You don't need to have gone through a major trauma to be here. Sometimes, the biggest trauma is the buildup of identical days, swallowed emotions, postponed dreams, and a soul-crushing routine. It's the subtle weight that breaks you silently. And the most dangerous part is when you start getting used to it. In this audiobook, we won't follow a traditional path. Here, you won't find ready-made advice, cliches, or happy-ending promises. What you'll hear are codes, vibrational codes. Words arranged to resonate with something inside you that already knows. Because yes, you already know. Your essence always knew. But it was silenced, muffled, repressed by a lifetime of conditioning. You were taught that you had to be strong all the time, that you had to please, that you had to be productive, correct, accepted. And in that effort, you drifted away from yourself. You created characters, wore masks, followed an invisible script written by someone who never knew what you carry inside. And the price of that is disconnection. The body feels it, the soul knows it, but the mind rationalizes, pushes it away, delays the dive. Until it can't anymore, until the body starts screaming. Not out loud, but through subtle symptoms, unexplained fatigue, sadness upon waking, repetitive thoughts spinning in circles, like your life is stuck in a loop with no exit. And maybe you've tried everything: courses, therapy, books, religion, techniques, and still feel like something is missing, because what's missing isn't on the surface. It's at the root. It's in the vibrational base that holds your reality. And that base can only be reached when you silence the outer world and start listening to what's vibrating within. This audiobook is about that, about returning to the center, not as an escape from reality, but as a reconnection with the only thing that's real, what vibrates in coherence inside you. The practice you'll learn here isn't new, it's ancient, passed down in silence, in subtext, in Egypt's temples, in Hermetic texts, in the gestures of great sages who knew the secret isn't in what's said, but in what's felt. There are no demands, no prerequisites. You don't have to understand everything or believe in everything. You just have to stay. Stay as your awareness opens, as your vibration reorganizes, as your mind starts to quiet so the being can emerge. And this has already started. You might not notice it, but something inside you is already moving, already remembering, already coming home. Because the memory of who you are doesn't come from outside. It is awakened. And in this instant, your soul began to remember. And that memory doesn't go back. But the real awakening begins when the mirror stops lying. Chapter 1: The Silent Mask. What cracks first isn't the world, it's the reflection. It's in the mirror that everything begins to fracture, not with a crash, but with a silent discomfort. You see yourself, but you don't recognize what you see. And the strangest part, you learn to live that way, learn to pretend it's normal. Smile, work, talk, fulfill your duties, all while carrying a nameless exhaustion inside. No one notices, because the mask is perfect, socially acceptable, flawless, even. But the price of wearing that mask for so long is steep. It gets paid in invisible installments: the drained energy, the fading motivation, the sudden desire to disappear in the middle of the night. And this is where many people go wrong. They think they're weak. They think they're failing, when, in truth, they're just overwhelmed with roles that were never theirs. From an early age, you were told who you should be, how to act, what to think, what to feel. And you learn to fit in, to edit your own essence to fit into tight molds, to be functional, even without being whole. Over time, it becomes a habit. You wake up every day and put on this constructed identity without realizing that it's draining you little by little, eating away at your life force. And then come the addictions. Some drink, some shop, some control. Some numb themselves with food, others with promises of success. But deep down, it all comes from the same place, the desperate attempt to escape yourself. And the escape isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. It's in the compulsion for productivity, the need to always be busy, the fear of stopping. Because stopping means feeling. And feeling might uncover what's been locked away for years: fears, guilt, failures, truths that were shoved under the rug of the conscious mind. But eventually, it becomes too much. The body starts to warn you, a pain that won't go away, crying with no reason, a weight on your chest with no cause. It's not weakness, it's not drama. It's the body saying, I can't keep holding up someone you're not. Disconnection from yourself is the ground where suffering grows. It's where destructive patterns take root, painful loops, toxic relationships. Because if you don't know who you are, you'll attract anything that promises to fill the hole, and so you get even more lost. The cycle is silent, almost imperceptible, but deadly. It steals your presence, your genuine joy, your spontaneity. It replaces all of that with the appearance of normalcy. And that is what makes you sick. When you stop listening to yourself, you start depending on external voices, validation, likes, compliments. And if those voices disappear, you fall apart. Because there's no longer a stable center inside you. Just an echo. Just an emptiness filled with rehearsed masks. The biggest wound isn't even the pain itself. It's the time you spent denying that pain. Trying to seem okay. Trying to function. Trying to justify what should have been embraced. That exhausts you. That breaks you. And one day, without warning, the collapse comes, not to destroy you, but to reveal. In that moment, it's common to resist, to try to glue the pieces back together, to try to put the mask back on, but it doesn't work, because what shattered wasn't control, it was the illusion. And once illusion is exposed, it can't hold itself up anymore. It's like waking from a dream, and no matter how comforting it was, you can't fall back asleep. This is where the real journey begins. The moment you allow yourself to see what's always been there. You were playing a role, and now the stage is starting to collapse. But it's not the world falling apart. It's the reflection that can't support the lie anymore. And when that happens, something inside you finally breathes for the first time in years. Now that the crack has appeared, it won't seal itself. And what comes next isn't the end. It's the beginning of something that can't be undone. The mirror will show you, but not what you want to see. It will show what's always been behind it, that gaze you avoided, that essence that got pushed into the background. And then, there's no turning back. Chapter 2. The Mirror That Breaks. The reflection doesn't lie. It only returns what you're trying to hide. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding that encounter, not with the face itself, but with what's behind it, the baggage, the unspoken burdens, what your eyes carry when no one's looking. That's why collapsing in front of the mirror isn't weakness, it's a right, a portal that opens in your most vulnerable, raw, naked soul moment. The tear that falls for no apparent reason, the face that crumbles uncontrollably, the expression that suddenly reveals everything that's been buried in your chest for far too long. The truth finally escapes the mask. This moment is always silent. It doesn't matter how loud the outside world is. Inside, everything stops. Time freezes. The mind stalls. The body shakes. Because it's right there that a choice appears. Not a rational, planned, or pretty choice, but a real, visceral fork in the road. Keep pretending, or cross over. And no one here is asking for perfection. This audiobook doesn't place you in the role of a hero, because true heroism doesn't live in visible achievements. It lives in the moment you decide to stop lying to yourself. When you realize the life you've been living is just a fragment, a sketch of what it could be if you stopped hiding. Most people hesitate, because facing that reflection is painful. It shows how much you've betrayed yourself trying to please, how much you silenced yourself out of fear, how much you settled for less because you didn't believe you deserved more. And all of that is heavy, all of that hurts. But it's that pain that gives the moment its rebirthing power. You're not crying just from sadness. You're crying because your body can't keep the soul locked in anymore. It's pushing. Trying to come out. Trying to break free from behind all the layers of conditioning, expectations, and frustration. And the mirror, unwillingly, becomes a witness to that inner birth. This isn't drama, nor exaggeration. This is truth, the kind that disturbs, shatters certainties, dismantles the character, the kind that opens space, because nothing new can be born unless something old dies first. And there, before your own reflection, you begin to bury the old script, the inherited stories, the beliefs that said, you must be strong, you can't mess up, you can't feel, but now you feel. And that is already a revolution. In that exact moment, as tears fall and your chest seems to implode, something happens deep within, something subtle, almost imperceptible, but absolutely sacred. It's as if a forgotten part of you lifts its gaze from deep inside and says, now you're finally seeing me. And when that happens, when you see and are seen by yourself, a different kind of clarity arises, a lucidity that doesn't come from the mind, but from the soul. You realize that it doesn't matter what others think, that you no longer have the energy to hold up masks, that it makes no sense to keep living just to maintain appearances. This is the threshold, the point of no return, the territory where the old self begins to collapse, not violently, but with a kind of honest exhaustion. And in that tiredness, the beginning is born, because now there is space to listen, to feel, to rebuild something real, something that doesn't depend on outside approval, something that vibrates with truth. You may not understand anything in this moment. You may just feel the ground shifting, the air thickening, your chest heavy. That's okay. You're not meant to understand. You're meant to cross through, like someone diving into water without knowing how to swim, but certain that sinking is no longer an option. The mirror that shattered won't be glued back together. It doesn't need to be, because it served its purpose. It showed you what you were avoiding. And now, with the reflection in pieces, you can finally see something that's been behind it all along. Something that never left. It just stayed hidden, waiting for you to stop running. Chapter 3. The soul's first yes. And every true yes opens a portal that can only be crossed in silence. This yes isn't heard with the ears. It happens in the body, like an inner click, as if a hidden force that had been on its knees inside you finally lifted its head. This yes isn't loud. It doesn't come with shouting or euphoria. It's small, but absolute. A subtle, almost invisible gesture that breaks the pact with the lie. It doesn't require you to have all the answers. It doesn't ask for permission to exist. It just happens. At the exact moment you stop running, the moment you realize that continuing to betray yourself hurts more than facing the unknown, saying yes to yourself is exactly that. It's an act of sacred rebellion, a quiet break from everything that holds you prisoner. At this point in the journey, the change isn't visible to others. On the outside, everything looks the same, but inside, something fundamental has already shifted. The soul said yes, and that yes stirs everything, not just your thoughts, but your frequency. The way you begin to vibrate, feel, respond. This yes is like lightning striking the sky of your consciousness, leaving everything exposed. No filters, no makeup. It's uncomfortable. Because suddenly, what used to be tolerable becomes unbearable. The empty conversations, the shallow relationships, the automatic repetitions, everything starts to lose flavor. Not because you've become negative, but because the soul, once awake, no longer accepts dead food. The first yes is also the first step out of the invisible prison. But unlike what many people think, it doesn't bring immediate relief. It doesn't come with lightness or clarity. On the contrary, it brings confusion, fear, disorientation, because it breaks structures. It shakes the world you built to protect yourself from your truth. It's common to want to go back, to pretend it was nothing, that it was just a moment of weakness or emotion. But the soul doesn't forget. After you say yes, even if you try to step back, something has already changed. The gear of transformation has started to turn. and everything that's not aligned with this new state will begin to collapse. Not as punishment, but as vibrational coherence. This yes is ancestral. It carries a force that comes from long before you were born. It's as if it were the voice of all your silenced, forgotten, ignored parts finally saying together, enough. It's this yes that frees you from the illusion of perfection, that liberates you from the obligation to please, that pushes you out of the role you were playing to be accepted, and returns to you the risk of being who you are. Because yes, being yourself is risky. It can hurt. It can make others uncomfortable. It can push people away, but it can also heal. It can set you free. It can expand you. And here's a detail that must be said. This yes doesn't need to be shouted to the world. It doesn't need to be posted, validated, or understood by anyone. It doesn't need an audience. Because the only place it truly needs to echo is within, in the soul, in the vibrational field where everything starts to realign. Maybe you don't yet know how to live from that yes. Maybe you're still surrounded by everything you built before it, and that's okay. You don't need to destroy anything right now. You just need to hold that yes inside you with honesty. Let it breathe. Let it guide you slowly. That yes, however small it may seem, is already the entry into a new reality field. A field where things are no longer imposed, but felt. Where choices aren't based on fear, but on truth. Where life stops being survival and begins to be presence. And you may not notice it right away, but the little things around you will start to shift. The way you respond to what used to throw you off, what you tolerate, what you attract. Because your vibration changes, and when your vibration changes, life responds. Chapter 4. The silence. That makes you hear yourself. And when you listen closely, something starts to light up from within. But listening isn't what you think. It's not about your ears or external sound or other people's words. Listening, at this level of presence, is an internal surrender. It's when you finally stop demanding immediate answers and start creating space to notice what has always been there, buried beneath the noise. The body is the first to speak, but for a long time it was ignored. Conditioned to function, to endure, to push forward even when it had no more energy left. How many times did you force a smile while your chest was burning? How many times did you say, "I'm fine," with a knot in your throat? The body heard all of that. It held it. It stored it. The problem is, when you ignore the body for too long, it stops trusting you. And that's why so many people try to meditate, try to be still, try to reconnect, but feel nothing. Because the body is still in defense mode. It learned not to even trust you. So before you can listen to it, you need to win it back. With presence, with patience, with truth. In this chapter, we'll cross that portal with respect. The body doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be heard. It's not an enemy, nor an obstacle. It's the sanctuary where your soul hid when the world outside became too aggressive. And now, if you make room, it will start to open the doors. Silence, in this context, is the most powerful instrument, but it needs to be a living silence, an attentive silence. It's not about shutting your mouth and letting your mind keep screaming. It's about quieting your expectations, lowering the need to understand everything, turning down the volume on your demands, and just being, sitting, breathing, and letting the body speak. And it does speak. Sometimes as a weight in your stomach, other times as tension in your shoulders, a shiver, an unexplainable heat, a sudden feeling of lightness. The language of the body is subtle, but it never lies. It carries the memories you didn't get to process. Every swallowed emotion got stored somewhere, and when you quiet the world, those memories begin to ask for space to come out. You don't need to be afraid. Whatever comes up is yours, and anything that's yours can be embraced, can be seen with new eyes. The pain that surfaces isn't attacking you. It's showing you what you tried to forget. It's saying, just hear me, just this once. This silence is also the field where the divine shows up, not as an image made by your mind, but as a real vibration, a gentle warmth that spreads slowly, a presence that doesn't need a name, a clarity that doesn't arrive through logic, but through feeling. When you enter this deep listening state, you start to feel the difference. The body relaxes, the mind slows down, and for the first time in a long time, you stop reacting and start simply existing. And it's in that state that the soul finds space to speak. It doesn't speak in words. It whispers in sensations, intuitions, sudden impressions that you don't know where they come from, but carry an unshakable certainty, as if something inside you finally came online, aligned, connected to something that had been waiting for this silence for a long time. This is the field where the first sparks of truth are born. You realize that what guided you before wasn't you. It was the voices of fear, of expectations, of comparisons, but now there's something new, something that doesn't need to be proven, only felt. And that's when everything starts to change. Not because you decided to change, but because you listened. Because you allowed your body to speak. And the body, when listened to with love, gives back trust. It begins to relax, to breathe deeper. The pain that once felt like part of you starts to move, and in its place, space appears. A silent and fertile space. Chapter 5. The Universe. Inside and out. But before we get to that detail, there's something that must be felt, not just understood, because understanding with the mind is easy. The mind loves concepts. But the universe doesn't respond to what you understand. It responds to what you vibrate. The external reality was never neutral. It works like a sensitive and faithful mirror. Everything you feel, think, believe, echoes into that mirror. And the reflection comes back as circumstances, encounters, losses, repetitions. It's not punishment. It's not automatic karma. It's vibrational response. This must be clear. The universe isn't against you. It is you, all the time. That feeling of being stuck in repeating patterns, like life insists on the same pains, isn't bad luck. It's coherence. It's alignment. It's an invisible field that emits signals and attracts matching situations. And that emission comes from your inner state, from your most constant emotional frequency, even the one you try to hide from yourself. When someone goes through a painful breakup, for example, and tries to immediately look strong, move on, act like nothing happened, the universe doesn't respond to the performance. It responds to the raw emotion that's being repressed, to the unacknowledged abandonment, to the unmet need for connection. And so, similar situations keep showing up, because that field is still pulsing with the same pain. Here, in this place of silent listening, the truth reveals itself more clearly. You're creating your reality all the time, even when you don't want to, even when you don't notice, because your vibration is a silent request to the universe. A request that isn't made with words, but with your state of being. If conflict is constant around you, it's because there's war inside. If there's repeated lack, it's because there's belief in scarcity. If there's rejection, it's because self-abandonment is vibrating at the core. And this isn't blame, it's a key, because when you understand that you're creating your experience from what you hold inside, you also understand that you can recreate it. It's not just a pretty spiritual theory, it's a living system. It's like the universe is a huge receptive field, waiting for your internal signals to configure the next scene. And those signals aren't sent through catchy phrases, but through real vibrations, through unresolved emotions, through memories you carry under your skin, even without realizing. It's like you're a radio station transmitting signals 24/7, but what you transmit isn't always what you say you want. You might wish for peace, but if you vibrate mistrust, what comes back is instability. You might wish for love, but if you carry unhealed rejection, what returns is distance. Life doesn't make mistakes, it simply reflects. That's why so many people keep saying, life is hard, nothing works out, the world is against me. But in reality, the world is trying to show you exactly where the misalignment is. Because everything that manifests outside is a mirror of what's messy inside. This perspective changes everything, because you stop blaming the external and start investigating your internal field. You begin noticing the triggers, the automatic responses, the half-digested emotions shaping your existence. It's not about controlling life, it's about adjusting the frequency you're broadcasting. It's about vibrating what you want to live, not just wish for with words. The ancients knew this, and they left this teaching coded in just a few words. As within, so without. As above, so below. That's one of the pillars of Hermeticism, and it's more relevant now than ever. Not as mysticism, but as practical wisdom. Reality responds precisely to the vibration you sustain, and that's why it can completely transform when you transform your internal state. And when you understand this mechanism with your body, not just your mind, something shifts. You start to realize that you're co-creating even in silence, that your deepest feelings are actually vibrational commands, and that, by caring for what you feel, you're literally cleaning the codes that shape your reality. But this realization alone isn't enough, because the detail that changes everything is still hidden in the practice. Chapter 6. The practice that harmonizes everything. And when this practice is done truthfully, something unexpected emerges from the darkness. It wasn't magic. It wasn't some extraordinary event. It was simple. So simple, it almost went unnoticed. But when done with truth, that minimal gesture opens doors that decades of effort could never unlock. At this point in the journey, you've already realized that the world isn't external. It begins inside, and now the time has come to align body, mind, and energy in one place. The now. And the now can only be accessed through practice, not theory, not intention, but embodied action. This practice is the bridge that connects the invisible with the tangible. It doesn't require you to be enlightened or to have read dozens of sacred books. It only asks for sincerity. A single authentic moment of presence with what you feel. Nothing more. Close your eyes. Sit down. Breathe. But not like someone trying to relax. Breathe like someone reuniting with something lost. Feel the air entering. Slowly expand your belly. Hold. Release. And do it again. And again. Until something starts to shift. At first, it might feel mechanical, but keep going. Because over time, that breath begins to clear the mind, to quiet the noise, to calm the urgency. And in that space between thoughts, a new frequency starts to settle in. Now, move your body. Slowly. Feel it. Where is there tension? Where are you holding strength without even noticing? Roll your shoulders. Stretch your neck. Open your arms like you're shedding armor. The body holds ancient stories, and conscious movement is like a key that unlocks those memories. We're not talking about dancing or technical stretching. We're talking about embodied presence, listening with your skin, feeling with your bones, giving your body permission to express however it wants, without judgment. Now listen, not with your ears, but with your inner field. What is the silence saying? What emotion is hiding beneath your chest? What pain have you been pushing down, afraid to face? When you listen without trying to fix it, the soul speaks. Breath, movement, listening. This is the sacred triangle that reorganizes your vibration. You don't need incense, specific music, or perfect posture. You need presence, because when it's real, presence is the temple, and that temple reconnects you. Hermetic wisdom has always spoken of this, though few have understood. The Corpus Hermeticum said, "The higher mind only emerges when the lower mind is stilled." And that happens here, in this small gesture of breathing with intention, moving with respect, listening without rushing. The world vibrates in noise, the ego vibrates in urgency, but the soul only appears when you slow down, when you make space, when you honor this moment as sacred, because it is. And it's in that moment that practice stops being an exercise and becomes a ritual, not ritual in the religious sense, but in the original sense of the word, conscious repetition with sacred intent. It's what you do every day that shapes who you become. And when you do it truthfully, this practice begins to reprogram your field. You'll notice. Little by little, you'll start reacting differently. You'll gain more clarity. You'll feel your body getting lighter. Decisions become simpler. External situations begin to shift. But not because the outer world changed. It's because the field that radiates from you changed first. This practice isn't about control. It's about surrender. It's about returning to the point of origin, the point where body, breath, and spirit walk together. That's where everything aligns. That's where everything heals, not in a miraculous leap, but in this gesture, repeated truthfully, day after day. Chapter 7. Transformation from the shadow. But when that pain meets love, even silence changes form. What you called pain for so many years was, in fact, a request, not for rescue, but for care. A silent call from within, from a part of you that you abandoned because you thought you had to be strong, productive, grown up. But time doesn't erase what wasn't seen. It just piles layers on top. And now it's time to look. There's a part of you that still carries the same expression from your first cry, the same reaction to your first no, the same insecurity from your first abandonment. It doesn't matter how many years have passed. That part is still there, hidden, watching everything, and interfering with everything, even when you think you've healed. The inner child is not a poetic symbol. It's a living instance of your emotional consciousness. It's the point where your identity began to form, and also the point where many distorted beliefs got stuck. The first time you were afraid to be who you were. The first time you were punished for being too joyful. The first time you felt you had to adapt so you wouldn't be rejected. All of that was recorded. And that child didn't disappear. She just learned to be quiet, to protect herself, to hide behind adult behavior. And while you ignore her, she keeps creating strategies to be heard. And those strategies are what you now call self-sabotage, reactivity, drama. But all of it is disguised cries from a part that never meant to cause problems. It just wanted to be loved. In this audiobook, you are being invited to stop running from your shadow, because real healing doesn't happen when you become someone new. It happens when you go back to retrieve the part of yourself that was left behind. Close your eyes. Picture yourself as a child. See where you are, what clothes you're wearing, what you're feeling, how your hands are, your eyes. Feel the environment. Notice if there's fear, loneliness, shame, anger. Now, approach gently, not with pity, but with presence, and silently say, "I see you. I'm here now, and I'll never leave you alone again." You might cry. You might feel nothing. You might want to run, but stay. Breathe. Keep going. Because this is the moment where true transmutation begins. You're not just imagining. You're reprogramming your emotional field with the only thing that transforms any frequency: love. This encounter is not a mental exercise. It's alchemy. It dissolves old patterns. Because every wound seen with love stops repeating itself. The cycle no longer needs to sustain itself. The energy that once spun around pain begins to reorganize around care, and that changes everything. When you embrace your inner child, you give her the chance to stop defending herself, to stop sabotaging your relationships, to stop hiding in distractions, and that release starts to shift your vibration effortlessly. What used to be protection becomes presence. What used to be resistance becomes trust. But here's the reminder. The shadow is not the enemy. It's just a part of you that had to take control because the rest of you was too busy trying to survive. And when you acknowledge that, the inner war ends. There are no more sides, only a center that starts to unify. This is one of the deepest moments in this process, because you're not just healing, you're becoming whole. You're allowing all parts of yourself to have a place, not just the light you show, but the wounds you tried to hide for fear of not being accepted. And this process isn't linear. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes you'll feel like you're regressing. But keep going, because it's in that path between who you were and who you're becoming that real transformation happens. A transformation that doesn't come through force, but through listening, through presence, through love. Chapter 8. The silence that scares. And it's there, on that threshold, that Thoth's true secret begins to reveal itself. When the noise stops, what's left? That question seems simple, but it hides an abyss. Most people say they're searching for peace, but when it finally arrives, something inside them tightens, and that tension is living proof that the soul was conditioned to war. We grew up believing life is constant movement, tension, noise, conflict. We learned that value lies in effort, in doing, in control. Stillness became associated with stagnation, weakness, meaninglessness, and because of that, when silence approaches, the body gets confused. The defense system kicks in, because the unknown, even when it's calm, is interpreted as a threat. The mind, trained to survive, begins to sabotage. Thoughts arise from nowhere, trying to fill the empty space. The heart races. The breath becomes uneasy. You begin to feel guilty for being still. And all of that happens because, deep down, silence has been confused with abandonment. But that emptiness isn't abandonment. It's openness. And here, at this exact point, lies one of humanity's greatest vibrational blocks, the fear of peace. Not the fear of a lack of conflict, but the fear of what comes up when there's no more distraction. Because when everything quiets down, the inner voices become audible, and many of those voices are old. They carry inherited guilt, unmet expectations, shames buried under 7 layers of noise. Silence doesn't create them. It simply reveals. That's why so many people need chaos, because chaos distracts. It keeps the mind busy. It gives purpose to the struggle, even if that struggle leads nowhere, even if it just repeats patterns, because at least chaos is familiar. But silence demands surrender. But then something shifts. A crack. A tiny break in the pattern. A second where the body doesn't react. Where the mind doesn't resist. Where the soul, for the first time in a long time, exhales. It's subtle, almost imperceptible. But right there begins the unraveling. In that moment, what once felt like a threat starts to show a different face. Silence stops being absence and becomes presence. A living presence that watches without judgment, that welcomes without questions, that simply is. And this is the ground where true wisdom can begin to grow. It's in this kind of silence that the ancient masters would immerse themselves, not as an escape, but as a portal. Thoth knew this, not just as a concept, but as practice. He taught that absolute silence is the space where the original word can be heard, Not the sound of ordinary words, but the vibration that comes before all manifestation. This silence, when accessed, is not emptiness. It is potential. It is the matrix where all realities sleep, waiting to be chosen. It's there that consciousness can recreate itself, free from the old voices. And it's there, too, that it must decide. Keep reacting to the old or start responding from the new. This decision isn't logical. It happens on another level. It happens when you stop resisting and start trusting. When you realize it's not silence that scares you. It's what it reveals about who you became while running from yourself. That's why this part of the journey is so delicate. Because it doesn't require effort, but surrender. Not answers, but listening. And that goes against everything the mind was trained to do. But it's exactly that contradiction that opens space for what comes next. Because all real transmutation begins here, when your internal noise stops having more power than the vibration of your own field. Chapter 9. The Secret Truly Revealed. But this awakening is not the end. It's the real beginning of something much greater. Until now, you've walked through invisible layers, touched forgotten wounds, crossed mirrors and silences. But now, something shifts direction, because the truth that begins to emerge at this point is no longer just about healing. It's about vibrational sovereignty, about a kind of intelligence that doesn't come from thought, but from frequency. And this is where the secret thought kept behind 7 veils begins, nous. This word has been translated over the centuries as higher mind or divine intellect. But at the heart of Hermetic wisdom, nous is not just a capacity for thought, it's vibrational consciousness in a state of coherence. When body, emotion, thought, and energetic field resonate in harmony with Source, nous awakens. You begin to notice this when what used to feel like a gut feeling becomes precision. When you walk into a room and sense something in the air, and later realize your read was spot on. When you feel something is going to happen, and it does, not by accident, but because you access the vibrational fabric of that moment. This ability isn't mystical, it's mechanical. Everything vibrates, everything emits signals. The universe is not made of solid matter, it's made of fields that communicate. And you are a living antenna in that system. When you clear the noise from your field, resentments, beliefs, loops, your reading becomes pure, direct, accurate. That's why, at this point, there's no longer any separation between spirituality and vibrational science. Nous is the zone where wisdom and frequency meet, where there's no longer a need to choose the right thing, because the right thing vibrates inside you like an absolute yes. And it's not an emotional yes. It's a cellular yes. A yes that the body feels, the field confirms, and reality bends to. This is the true secret. It's not about attracting something. It's about entering the frequency of the one who already lives that truth. Because reality, as Thoth taught, is an automatic response to the field you emit. Nous simply reveals with clarity where you're vibrating now. No drama, no judgment, just truth. And that's why the awakening of nous isn't a miracle. It's a daily choice. It's the result of living in alignment with what you feel, what you speak, what you do. Coherence is what activates this system. There's no point in wanting to hear your intuition if you're constantly betraying what you feel. Nous only reveals itself where there is vibrational truth. And when that truth settles in, you begin to operate from a new axis. No longer from fear, not from anxiety, but from presence. You begin to notice the signs of the universe as extensions of your own awareness. Every synchronicity, every confirmed intuition, every decision that resonates with your essence, all of it starts to re-educate your vibration. And when that happens, the world doesn't change. You change the way the world organizes itself around you. Chapter 10. The Living Temple Within You. And when the temple becomes alive, it begins to radiate wisdom. There's a moment in the journey when the seeker realizes that what they were looking for outside was never there. Not in the scriptures, not in the teachers, not in stone altars. Because everything truly sacred always pulsed from within, silent but constant. At that point, what once was a search transforms into a remembrance. You are the temple. In this audiobook, that realization becomes visceral. The body, long seen as an obstacle or spiritual prison, now reveals itself as a portal. Every cell holds memory. Every heartbeat carries a cosmic rhythm. You're not just inhabiting a body, you are embodying a frequency. And the more aligned you are with your essence, the more your body vibrates as a sanctuary. The true temple isn't made of stone. It's made of presence. It's when you begin to care about what you feel, what you think, what you speak. It's when your actions stop being automatic and start becoming sacred. Not because they follow external rules, but because they flow from internal coherence. The true Hermetic initiation happens in this moment, when your consciousness recognizes your own being as divine. You realize that every external ritual was just a rehearsal for this reunion with a deep and simple truth. Your existence is the altar, breath is the incense, silence is the prayer. The body, when treated with respect and attention, becomes a channel. It doesn't just house the soul, it vibrates with it, dances with it, reveals it, and then the temple awakens. And when it awakens, it radiates. Because a being in alignment doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. They emanate. Your vibration shifts the field around you. Your mere presence lights up dormant zones in others. Your listening becomes healing. The living temple doesn't say much. It transmits. And the more you live this truth, the less you feel the need to escape. Because being within yourself becomes enough. It's no longer about getting there. It's about inhabiting this here with so much depth that time bends and reality reorganizes. That's when everything around starts to respond with precision. Because the universe recognizes the sacred in vibration. The true initiation was never a secret kept by a few. It was a frequency held by a few. And now that the temple pulses, the field begins to respond. And that response transforms when you activate the most ignored power of the modern world. Everything vibrates. But not everything vibrates with consciousness. Most people walk through life emitting signals without knowing what they're transmitting. Undigested emotions, looping thoughts, words spoken without intention. Matter responds anyway, because it doesn't judge. It only mirrors. Modern physics has confirmed what the ancients already knew. Visible reality is shaped by invisible fields, and those fields are fueled by your vibration. The emotion you sustain, the frequency of your words, the kind of silence you cultivate, all of it creates impact. All of it becomes form, return, echo. But there's one detail that changes everything. Your vibration can be retrained. And that doesn't happen through force. It happens through truth. When you begin to observe your reactions, your automatic thoughts, your recurring emotions, something lights up. You begin to see the patterns that were shaping your reality. And when you shift the vibration of those patterns, the field responds differently. Matter obeys. You want more love? Vibrate in presence and acceptance. Want more clarity? Clear the mental noise. Want abundance? Align your frequency with authentic gratitude, not anxiety disguised as desire. The universe doesn't respond to what you pretend to feel. It responds to what you actually emit. That's why vibrational practice isn't esoteric. It's internal engineering. Every emotion has a field. Every thought sends out a wave, and you are the origin point of it all. Matter just reflects. And it starts to transform when the source starts emitting something different. But this deep change only happens when you activate a forgotten power, one that's already inside you now, but almost no one was taught to use. Chapter 11. The Power of the Real Now. And when the now is truly lived, reality begins to bend before it. The greatest illusion still dominating modern humans is the belief that life happens later, that something important will happen after, that love, peace, healing, or awakening are always just one step away, except that step never arrives, because while the mind projects the future, the body is here, begging to be inhabited. In this audiobook, that truth is revealed not as theory, but as vibrational experience. Presence isn't passivity. It's a hidden force, neglected for centuries. When you are here, not just with your body, but with your attention, something starts to reorganize. The mind slows, the heart aligns, and the field around you begins to respond. It's common to hear "live in the present" as spiritual advice. But what few realize is that the present is natural technology. It accesses a type of time that isn't chronological, it's vibrational. In this time, everything communicates with more precision. Synchronicities appear, ideas flow, the body relaxes, the spirit manifests with clarity. Most pain is born from the fracture between where the body is and where the mind insists on being. When that fracture is healed, the entire system starts to heal, not because you understood something intellectually, but because you finally made contact with what's always been available, the now. But being present isn't the same as being still. It's moving with attention. It's feeling your hands when you touch something. It's truly listening to someone. It's breathing with awareness of the air moving in and out. These small daily rituals, when done with intention, begin to shift your state of being. And what happens when this becomes consistent? Reality adapts. It starts to respond with more ease. What once felt far away begins to come closer. Answers arrive more quickly. Conflicts lose strength. The real now has power because it's the only point from which you can emit vibration with coherence. It's not about escaping the past or controlling the future. It's about discovering that now isn't a pause, it's an axis. And from that axis, everything essential is revealed. But something even greater was reserved for those who choose to serve. Chapter 12. Shared Healing. And when you serve from the heart, something sacred begins to rise from within. In this audiobook, you discover that the turning point doesn't happen when you achieve something external, but when you realize you have something to offer. The act of serving is one of the most powerful vibrational movements of awakened consciousness. It's not about forced charity or erasing yourself for an ideal. It's a spiral of healing. The more you offer what has already overflowed from within, the more the very channel that energy flows through gets purified. The wound, when acknowledged and crossed, becomes medicine, and that medicine in turn finds its mirror in others. When you reach out, you're not just helping someone, you're activating the healed parts of yourself. True service doesn't come from obligation, it comes from listening. It's when you feel that what hurt you for so long can now be light for someone still in the dark. But serving with truth doesn't need a stage. It often happens in silence. In a look that understands, a presence that holds space, a gesture that listens without needing to fix. And it's in that simplicity that the sacred lives. Because contrary to what we were taught, you don't need to be totally ready to be useful. You just need to be sincere. Sincerity vibrates, and that vibration reaches dimensions words never could. By sharing what you've integrated, even if you're still in process, you accelerate your own healing, not by calculation, but by natural vibrational law. The universe responds with abundance to every gesture born of an awakened heart. And it's in that cycle of giving and receiving that the field begins to reorganize. If before you walk seeking your own healing, now you walk to be healing for the world. But that doesn't put you above anyone. On the contrary, it makes you more human. Because to serve from the heart is to recognize in the other the same spark you've learned to embrace in yourself. And when that movement becomes real, something starts to radiate from within, as if a forgotten light is pulsing again at the center of your chest. That light doesn't need to be explained, it's felt. And when it begins to vibrate, the matter around it begins to respond. The world doesn't need to be convinced, it needs to be touched. And the one who serves with the heart no longer seeks meaning, they become the meaning, embodied. You didn't find this audiobook by accident. It found you when you were ready to remember who you are. Now, you are the practice. You are the temple. You are the light. If you made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized this frequency. So write in the comments right now, I remember who I am. I'm coming home. I want to see who felt this call vibrate within. Oh, and if you'd like to support this channel directly and help spread messages like this across the world, the link is in the first pinned comment. Every bit of support vibrates, expands, and transforms. Gratitude for being a part of this. And before you leave, pay attention. A special video has been selected for you on the screen. It picks up exactly where this energy left off. Click it now so we can meet there and go even deeper into this practice.